Good afternoon, everyone. Just before I begin, I want to express on behalf of myself, the Canadian delegation, our appreciation to President Lee, our Korean hosts, for an extraordinary set of meetings, extraordinary productive set of meetings, also for their hospitality, their friendship, and their partnership. So we will be going back to Ottawa shortly, those of us going to Ottawa, after concluding an important and very productive week. This marked my first trip to Asia as Prime Minister, and Asia is a region like Canada that's at the forefront, at the coalface, if you will, of the global transformation that is gathering pace. And throughout my visit, and in every conversation, whether it was with a world leader, a CEO, an investor, there was one theme that was constant, which is the uncertainty around that transformation. But because this is Asia, the conversation quickly turned to the opportunities. Because uncertainty holds back investment, it freezes business strategies, it curtails jobs. Opportunity comes from fundamentally changing how countries trade, how they partner, how they build, and the technologies that go with that. Le Canada se trouve à un point tournant, à l'aube d'une nouvelle ère. L'ancien monde, sur lequel reposait une grande partie de notre prospérité, est en train de disparaître. Le nouveau monde n'est pas encore apparu. Comment nous réagissons aujourd'hui déterminera notre avenir économique pour les décennies à venir. La prochaine ère du Canada serait marquée par l'ambition, l'innovation et la croissance. In 3 days, our government will table our first federal budget. Our plan to protect our communities, our borders, our way of life. Our plan to build a stronger economy where everyone has a chance to get ahead. And our plan to empower Canadians with new opportunities, better careers, and a lower cost of living. Our budget will respond head-on to the challenges of our time. We all know the United States is changing its trading relationship with Canada, but it's changing all of its trading relationships. And after all the noise of this week, Canada still has the best trade deal of any country with the U.S., and we stand ready to negotiate an even better one for both countries. But in that backdrop, we know that we have to transform our economy. Transform it from one of reliance on a single trade partner to one that's more resilient to global shocks, to an economy built on the solid foundations of strong Canadian industries and bolstered by diverse international trade partners. That's one of the core aims of Budget 2025, to catalyze unprecedented levels of investment in Canada, generational investments that will create good, high-paying, not just jobs, good, high-paying careers for Canadian workers. And on top of that, we're embarking on an ambitious new mission to double our non-U.S. exports over the next decade. This alone will generate $300 billion more in trade for our economy and for Canadian workers and their families. That's new orders for Canadian resources, Canadian industries, and Canadian expertise. Diversifier notre commerce et attirer les investissements au Canada, c'est notre priorité ici en Asie du Sud-Est. Les ministres canadiens du Commerce et de la Défense et moi-même, nous avons travaillé pour établir de nouveaux partenariats et créer de nouvelles possibilités pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes. Nous cherchons à conclure de nouveaux accords commerciaux dans l'une des régions les plus économiques, dynamiques au monde, une région à l'avant-garde de la croissance mondiale. The meetings just over the last few days at APEC, which stands for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. This is a group that is a global economic powerhouse. 21 member economies representing over 60% of the world's GDP. Half of the world's trade, with nearly 40% of the world's population. An exciting future is being written here in Asia, and we're here to ensure that Canada is a big part of it and benefits from it. In Gyeongju, I met with the President of Korea, President Lee, to announce a new security and defense cooperation partnership, the first of its kind for Canada in the Indo-Pacific. We're deepening cooperation with Korea on security, defense, and in emerging domains such as cyber, AI, and quantum. Korea is one of our closest allies. Ce partenariat stratégique global entre le Canada et la Corée renforcera une région Indo-Pacifique libre, ouverte et fondée sur des règles. Cet accord stimulera l'innovation en défense et créera de nouvelles possibilités pour les travailleurs canadiens et coréens. You know, since we signed our free trade agreement with Korea about a decade ago, trade between our two nations has doubled. But that's just the start. We can do a lot more. So next year, there will be a Team Canada trade mission to Korea to find new markets and new customers for Canadian businesses and their workers. Also here in Gyeongju, I met with the Prime Minister of Thailand, and he and I agreed that we will launch free trade negotiations between our nations with the intention of completing them over the next year. Thailand is Canada's second largest trading partner in Southeast Asia, and a new free trade agreement will create new opportunities for Canadian companies in agri-food, in infrastructure, in clean technology, and defense. Yesterday, President Xi of China and I had the first formal meeting between the leaders of our two countries in nearly 8 years. We have to talk to each other if we want to make progress and address issues. We agreed this meeting marked a turning point in our bilateral relationship. We have now unlocked a path forward to address current issues and to build the enormous opportunities between our two countries, including in agriculture, energy, clean technologies, tourism, and cultural exchanges. I have accepted President Xi's invitation to visit China in the new year. And the President and I directed our ministers and officials to work together to find solutions to current challenges and to identify areas for cooperation and growth in advance of that meeting. This morning, I met with the President of Chile, where we signed an updated Canada-Chile strategic partnership, deepening cooperation in critical minerals, clean energy, wildfire management, and digital technologies. Chile is the world's largest copper producer. It has the world's largest reserves of copper and lithium, and it wants to work with Canada's sophisticated mining and infrastructure investors to develop sustainably those resources and the supply chains. Le Canada et le Chili sont des partenaires dans le cadre d'un accord de libre-échange depuis 1997. Nous renforçons cette relation pour accroître le flux d'exportation canadienne et générer davantage d'affaires pour les entreprises canadiennes, en particulier dans les secteurs miniers et dans les produits pharmaceutiques et des machineries. This progress in the last few days builds on the momentum from earlier this week on the margins of the ASEAN Summit, where I met with President Marcos of the Philippines, and he and I agreed to initiate negotiations on a new free trade agreement between our two nations, Canada and the Philippines, with a goal of concluding it by this time next year. In all of my meetings with the ASEAN leaders, I heard a consistent message. Canada wants to do more with Canada. And to that end, we agreed to accelerate the Canada-ASEAN free trade negotiations targeting completion by next year. And for reference, ASEAN is 20% of the global economy. That new free trade agreement, when it's completed, will create jobs for Canadian workers in sectors such as critical minerals, clean tech, agri-food, aerospace, and advanced manufacturing, while lowering prices for Canadian consumers in goods from electronics to clothing. This week, I also met with CEOs of multinational companies, investors, and heads of sovereign wealth funds from across Asia with a mission to catalyze new investment into Canada. With the Minister of National Defense, I visited the Hanwha Ocean Shipyard, which is one of 2 finalists for the Canadian Patrol Submarine Project. This project will protect Canadians. It will help protect our allies. And we will design it so it provides enormous ongoing investment and jobs in Canada. In Kuala Lumpur, we announced funding to expand the BlackBerry Cyber Security Center of Excellence into an international hub for cyber intelligence and security innovation. Witnessed Malaysia Airlines sign a deal with CAE to purchase Canadian-built flight simulator, and a testament to Canada's ever-growing footprint in the region. Our government is working hard, it's moving fast to expand Canada's reach globally. We've already signed new agreements with the UAE in artificial intelligence infrastructure, the European Union in defense and trade, Germany in critical minerals, Mexico in agri-food. Nous avons également conclu des négociations sur un code de libre-échange avec l'Équateur qui réduit ou élimine les droits de douane sur la majorité des exportations canadiennes. Last month in Ottawa, we concluded a historic free trade agreement with Indonesia. Now, as I said earlier, the mission of Budget 2025 is to catalyze unprecedented investment in Canada. So to support that, we're forging these new partnerships with APEC countries so Canadian workers and businesses can sell more of what we build and grow. And we are making it easier to build more, build big, and build fast in Canada. Canada is entering a new era. This is our moment to define our next century. We have the resources to transform our economy from one of reliance to resilience. We're an energy superpower with the 3rd largest reserves of oil and the 4th largest reserves of natural gas in the world. This past June, we shipped our first LNG export to Asia. By 2030, we will produce 50 million tons of LNG each year, all destined for Asian markets. By 2040, that number could double. We already have a domestic electricity grid that is 85% clean, which we can increase by another 50% through new generation, including large-scale hydro and nuclear, both utility-scale and commercial SMRs. La semaine dernière, nous avons annoncé un nouveau projet financement pour le projet nucléaire d'Arlington, en Ontario, qui fera du Canada le premier pays du G7 à disposer d'un petit réacteur modulaire opérationnel. This new reactor will help power clean manufacturing, AI infrastructure, and the electrification of our sustainable economy. You know, we're having all these conversations, making these agreements on critical minerals because we are among the top 5 producers of 10 critical minerals that are essential for the energy transition. So we're fast-tracking mines and producing to meet demand. Nous sommes la première destination mondiale pour les diplômes de maîtrise arbitrant la main-d'œuvre la plus qualifiée de la planète. Le Canada est un chef défi mondial dans le domaine de technologies propres, de l'intelligence artificielle, des sciences de la vie et de l'informatique quantique. In an uncertain world, to go back to where I started, in an uncertain world, a confident Canada is charting its own course, finding new partners, making major investments, seizing the future for Canadian workers and their families. Because we are Canada strong. And with that, I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now begin some questions. We'll do one question and one follow-up. Une question suivie. First question.
Hi, Prime Minister. Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Did you apologize to Donald Trump about Ontario's anti-tariff ad?
I did. I did apologize to the President. The President was offended by the act, or by the ad, rather. And it's not something I would have done, which is to put in place that advertisement, and so I apologize to him. En français, oui, j'ai fait mes excuses pour l'avertissement de l'Ontario. J'ai fait mes excuses au président pour l'avertissement de l'Ontario parce que il a fait du mal de lui, premier point. Deuxièmement, ce n'est pas mon choix. Et moi, je suis responsable pour les relations avec les États-Unis, avec le président des États-Unis. I'm the one, in English, I'm the one who is responsible in my role as Prime Minister for the relationship with the President of the United States, and the federal government is responsible for the foreign relationship with the U.S. government. So things happen, we take the good with the bad, and I apologize to him.
That he viewed the ad with you in advance of it going to air. Since you're the person that's solely responsible for negotiations, did you inform Mr. Ford that this is something that you did not want to go forward with?
Yes.
And what came of that?
Well, you saw what came of it.
Yasmine Média avec Radio-Canada, juste pour clarifier, est-ce que vous avez dit à Doug Ford de ne pas diffuser la publicité?
Oui, je l'ai vu, je lui ai avisé que c'est le moment de parler. Comme j'ai dit aux Canadiens et Canadiennes, c'est le moment de parler, de discuter, de faire des négociations avec les Américains. C'était la stratégie du gouvernement du Canada. Et nous sommes responsables pour la stratégie, pour les négociations par rapport aux Américains. OK, M. Ford, il a pris une décision, il est indépendant, il peut le faire. Mais ce n'est pas exactement utile. Là. Deuxième question.
Oui.
Alors. Oui.
On va y arriver.
OK.
Vous dites que c'est le temps de parler aux États-Unis. Donald Trump a dit clairement qu'il ne voulait pas vous parler. Quand est-ce que vous allez changer d'approche? Est-ce que ce n'est pas le moment de le faire?
Comme je viens de dire, nous sommes prêts de résumer les négociations quand les Américains sont prêts. Mais s'il faut prendre des décisions après un certain temps, on va le faire.
Next question.
Après un certain temps. On attend, madame.
Judy Train with CTV
Judy.
News. Prime Minister, if I could just ask for your clarification. You said that you told Doug Ford that he shouldn't air the ad. My question then, the fact that Premier Ford went ahead with the ad, the fact that the Premier of BC wants to put out an ad, the fact that the Premier of Manitoba, Wab Kinew, supports Doug Ford's ad, does this show that there is division within Team Canada, that the premiers don't trust you to negotiate?
I think there is, well, the individuals can speak for themselves, and they're practiced in speaking to themselves, and they will speak for themselves. There are other premiers who have different view in terms of the utility of those ads, and you can speak to them. I'll repeat what the situation is with those who actually have been talking with the Americans and have been negotiating with the Americans. That we start from this position, which it does bear remembering, that we are in a position where 85% of our trade is tariff-free. We, like every other country in the world, okay? Every other country in the world has issues if they produce any of the following: steel, aluminum, automobiles, pharmaceuticals, forest products, with 232, so-called 232 tariffs in the United States. And so that's what we're having discussions with, or that's what we were having discussions with with the Americans. That's where we're negotiating. We were making progress. Those talks are suspended. That's the situation at present. And it has a couple of implications. One of the core implications is it absolutely validates the strategy we have had from day one, which is to focus on the things we can control. Yes, negotiate with the United States. Of course, that's important. But building Canada at home, which is what this budget is going to do, with generational investments, the scale of investment that this country has never seen before, that's what this budget is looking to unlock, and to be building new partnerships with countries around the world. And there is no better place to do that than in the fastest growing part of the world that represents 60% of the global economy. We can adjust for the American component of that, but there's everyone else. So if I take it down to a little more than 40% of the global economy, ex the United States. And those are the discussions we're having. And you can see the traction we're getting. Free trade deal with Indonesia, free trade talks now launched with Philippines and Thailand, two of our largest. We already have free trade through something called the CPTPP with a number of those other economies. A turning point in our relationship with China. Progress which we have been making with India. Not part of these meetings, so I didn't meet directly with Prime Minister Modi here. The foreign minister, other ministers have been meeting with India. That's what we're doing to build our strength at home, first and foremost, build these partnerships abroad, reduce our reliance on the United States. It can't happen overnight, but we're moving very fast.
With respect, Prime Minister, the United States makes up more than 75% of our trade.
I'm well
They're
aware
not-
of that, yeah.
Yes. You apologized to Donald Trump. He's not going back to the table. He has no interest. So what are you doing? What is your next move, or are you close to striking out?
Very clever. No, I just fouled one off. The count is full, but we're battling like the Jays. Look, the next move is on Tuesday. The next move is the budget. It's the budget for this time. The budget the country needs. The budget that gives us control. See, this is one of the things. We can spend our time watching Truth Social, worrying about the reactions of individual things. We are staying calm, okay? We're focusing on what we can control, which first and foremost is how we build at home. And secondly, with our negotiations with the U.S., when they're on, when they come back on, is what's in the best interests of Canada. Not emotional, what's in the best interests of Canada. They will only agree, the Americans will only agree, as is the case in any trade negotiation, something that also is in the U.S. interest. There are a number of things where those interests align. And we'll wait until they're ready.
Next question. Raf.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Rafik Jikanyan, CBC. Following your meeting with President Xi, neither Canada's readout or China's made mention of you bringing up things such as Uyghur detention camps or the transnational repression in Canada or Beijing's foreign interference into Canadian elections. Did you bring these issues up?
We had a discussion on foreign interference. We had a discussion on a range of other issues. Recognizing that setting it back on track, particularly on the economic side, was an important part of the discussion.
Follow-up.
Et ce qui est important, on commence en français, ce qui est important, d'avoir l'occasion d'avoir des discussions à le plus haut niveau. Il n'y a pas de discussion, on peut parler de tous les sujets que vous l'avez mentionnés, mais seulement avec les Canadiens, pas avec les Chinois. Il faut avoir un rapport, une ligne directe avec le président et le premier ministre de la Chine. Et maintenant, c'est établi pour la première fois dans presque 8 ans. Alors, ça c'est la première chose. Deuxièmement, en ce qui concerne les discussions, oui, nous avons eu une discussion sur l'entente étrangère. Mais la plupart des discussions sont sur des enjeux économiques. Mais en même temps, c'est une discussion d'établir les principes. Ce sera, I will translate in a second. Ce sera le principe d'être pragmatique, ouverte, franche pour nous deux. Dans les discussions. Pas de surprise, en effet. And I think if I can finish to loop back. So the other element of the discussion, which is something you do in a relationship as opposed to a transaction, not suggesting your question was transactional in any respect, but I'd like to distinguish how some other discussions go, is to be clear about the expectations, that we will be pragmatic, that we will be open and frank with each other on issues, and there are issues of challenge, and where we can find common ground, we'll find common ground, and where we have differences, and there are big differences in our societies and in our governments, we'll respect those.
So how did he react when you mentioned foreign interference in the Canadian
Look, we
elections?
had, listen, we had a discussion that was, our overall discussion was constructive, and it was number one, constructive. Number two, marked a turning point in the relationship. I don't think they recognize the level of concerns we have about these issues, but we manage these issues in Canada. We have a structure to manage them. And look, I'm going to repeat what I said because it's very important. It doesn't do any good to talk to ourselves about these issues alone. It's important that we are engaged with the world's largest country by population, second largest economy by value, and increasingly influential, determinant, not just influential, determinant of the global system. So we need to be back in there, and now we are back in having those discussions.
Next question.
And I guess the last point, I'm sorry, I'm going to drone on for 1 sec. And the point of having the relationship is, if you have a relationship, you see people multiple times. It's not a one and done, and that's where we are. Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, Prime Minister. Sarah Ritchie with the Canadian Press. If you cast your mind back to April during the election campaign, I know it feels like a long time ago for me, you told Canadians that China was the biggest security threat to this country and to Canadians. Do you still believe that to be the case?
I think we have to manage all our threats. There are a number of threats from a country you mentioned, Russia. We have non-state actor threats, which are material. I guess, one of the advantages of having your security clearance is you're better informed about some of the threats, and I highly recommend that anyone, either in the position of responsibility or seeking it, has their security clearance. So I have a richer sense of the tapestry of threats that face our country. And I'll tell you one thing, if I may, and I'll hand back after this, which is what that does, it just hardens the resolve of the government to protect Canadians and to take a variety of measures that we are taking to protect Canadians. So it reinforced the need for the big increase commitments that we made. We didn't make commitments at NATO because all the other kids were making commitments at NATO. We made commitments to increase our defense spending because we have to protect our Arctic. We have to assert our sovereignty in the Arctic and protect Canadians there because of non-state actor threats as well. Also, threats in the cyber world, which are only growing. We have the ability to help protect us. We have questions about foreign interference and non-state actor interference in the virtual world in Canada, if I can put it that way. We take those threats seriously, and we're managing those.
When you were talking to us about your meeting with President Xi, you said that this would be good for Canadian workers and their families. And so for the people who are producing canola and pork and seafood in Canada, what did you get out of this?
Well, thank you. Sorry, I'll let you finish, but yeah. So what we got is what was not going to happen prior to this meeting was there was going to be any movement on the trade restrictions in those areas or in other areas, or in even things such as I mentioned in my remarks, people-to-people exchange or tourism. Canada is not a destination for China. I mean, we're in a bucket of 3 or 4 countries alongside North Korea and I think South Sudan. Maybe I'm missing the 4th, unfortunately, but trust me, there's 4. So not having those areas, what this does, what the meeting accomplished, which was the objective of the meeting, was to establish that relationship at the highest level for the first time in 8 years, and to unlock few things. One is shorter term, very important shorter term issues. You mentioned canola, same with the fishing industry. Those are important issues for us. And the instruction of officials and ministers to work on both sides to find resolution for those is something that comes out of that meeting at that level in that system, okay? Don't have the meeting, don't have the understanding of where the relationship is going to go, there would not be progress on those issues, okay? People sometimes simplify it down and give this for that. That's not the way it works. So to give Canadians a sense, and your question's absolutely the right one, so what does it mean? It means that we have a few things. One, for those hardworking farmers, fishers, a pathway to address the tariffs that China has on them. And we're going to be working hard to get those resolved and move forward, the first thing. The second thing, it opens up a much bigger set of opportunities for a broader range of Canadian businesses. Not in all areas, but in areas that are to our advantage. And that's part of what we will scope out over the course of the next few months in advance of my visit. But again, to come back to a relationship as opposed to a transaction, what you do with a relationship is then you make progress on certain things and then you move on to the next issues and you build on that. And that's what is now unlocked, which was not the case 24 hours ago.
Next question.
Steve Chase,
Yeah.
Globe and Mail.
Right.
We're still trying to take the full measure of your policy towards China, so I'll ask you about the Indo-Pacific policy, the government's Indo-Pacific policy. It calls China an increasingly disruptive global power. Do you stand by that statement? Do you agree with that statement? Do you think that's still the way it should be expressed?
I think that, following Steve, one is that there are different aspects of disruption. One is economic disruption. We see that in terms of Chinese competitiveness in certain areas, market dominance in other areas. I mean, there were issues with critical minerals, for example, overcapacity in certain, say, steel would be another example of that, where those are disruptive facts that we are adjusting to as Canada. What are we and actually flips around. So the critical mineral side, enormous opportunity for Canada. Enormous opportunity for Canada because the world wakes up and realizes not to have all their eggs in one basket, lesson we're learning as well with the United States. So a chance for us to build out. And, I'll just reference that yesterday, I'll get my dates right, but October 31st, the Minister of Natural Resources, Minister Hodgson, was hosting the G7 in Toronto, he says, hesitant, in somewhere in Canada. I think it was in Toronto. I know the run-up to the meeting and the outcome, where more than 20 critical mineral agreements were signed, almost $2 billion worth of investment. The vast majority involving Canadian companies. It's G7, but the vast majority of Canadian companies and things in Canada. So that disruption that comes from China brings also opportunity. That's the economic disruption. I think, look, we're clear-eyed about the issues in the Indo-Pacific, the issues more broadly from a geostrategic perspective. We have pragmatic engagement with China, there are areas where we will engage and cooperate, and there's others where, again, in a relationship, we can establish an ability to make our views known directly to them.
Follow-up?
Your predecessor came in 10 years ago intending to open a new glorious chapter of relations with China as well. In fact, he wanted to sign a free trade deal. But one of the things that happened, it wasn't just the imprisonment of the Michaels, it was investment restrictions, it was restrictions on collaboration. They blocked the flagship Huawei from Canadian wireless. They fenced off significant portions of the Canadian industry.
Yep.
They restricted funding for any collaboration with Chinese state and military institutions. Were any of those things wrong? And are you going to revisit the restrictions on Chinese investment in Canada? Look,
First thing, what's done is done. I mean, the past is the past, and the question is where you look moving forward. Part of the approach, certainly that I will take, and I think the expectation from President Xi, Premier Li, from the Chinese side, is to be clear what are the areas where we can cooperate, and what are the areas where we wouldn't. What are the sensitive areas in terms of inbound investment from China, or from their perspective, Canadian investment or activity in China. And there is a very large area. I don't think they're particularly, I didn't ask them the question yesterday, it wasn't to get down to this level of detail, but, Lululemon or Canada Goose into China, I think that's okay. Certain elements of cyber cooperation and others in China or in Canada, that's a different issue. So it's being clear on where they are. I'm not going to spell them all out right now. It's part of the engagement.
Next question.
Okay.
Hi, Prime Minister Brian Platt with Bloomberg. Last year, your predecessor put tariffs on pretty steep tariffs on 3 Chinese products, essentially, steel, aluminum, electric vehicles. The readout after your meeting yesterday said you discussed solutions to some of these irritants. It did not say steel and aluminum. It did say electric vehicles. So should we take that to mean steel and aluminum are off the table here, but Canada's tariffs on EVs, that is something you're willing to look at and revisit?
The way I would frame it, and it's early days, so I don't want to get too far ahead. There are questions about where our cooperation is in energy. And I'm going to use energy in the broadest sense, and I'll be a little more specific now, but it's part of the way to have the relationship is, okay, where are we going in energy? PetroChina, Chinese oil company, is one of the purchasers of LNG from what's called LNG 1, the first of those I referenced in my remarks. I think they're 15%. There's a variety. The Korean gas company, Petronas in Malaysia, also purchases. There's a range. Shell would be another. So there's a relationship there in LNG. There's a relationship for some of our oil exports. Actually, I may have got that wrong. It may be on the TMX. Sorry, I apologize. I'll come back and give you the. You can go on Bloomberg and you can figure it out. That's one aspect of energy cooperation. Another aspect of energy cooperation is what potential role will Canadian uranium exports play, big nuclear, and the Canadian nuclear sector and the Chinese nuclear sector, given the scale of their build-out and given our expertise, including in SMRs. On the other side, from a Canadian perspective, we are building out, one of the big advantages we have in Canada is this, we basically have a clean grid, or almost a clean grid. And the question is, how do we then take that to the next level for electrification of our economy? For, if we're going to have more EVs, we need more clean electricity, or it doesn't really make sense to do that. For clean manufacturing, for AI data centers and all those other aspects. We have big hydro, for example, Churchill Falls. We have big nuclear in Ontario. We have some investments in BC as well. But there also will be conventional renewables, solar and particularly wind, offshore wind. One of the projects of national interest is Wind West off Nova Scotia, potentially 50 or 60 gigawatts of wind. For that, and you also need storage capacity, so it's a long answer, but you asked for it. You need storage capacity. Some of the most competitive companies in the world are Chinese in both offshore wind and in battery storage. It's a natural potential area for cooperation even before you get to EVs. And of course, there is they're very competitive in EVs, but the EV component is part of a bigger restructuring of our auto sector. So we'll proceed carefully with that.
Follow-up?
And I also just wanted to ask you about, there was a lot of talk on this trip about submarine procurement, obviously. You visited a shipyard. I wanted to ask you about fighter jets. Have you made a decision yet on the F-35 review? When will Canadians learn what your decision is on this?
I haven't had any Canadians ask me about the F-35. Oh, well, are you asking on behalf of, you're asking on behalf of Canadians? Look, we'll make a decision. I'll put this in context. There is, as it should be, there are defense considerations and there are jobs and industrial considerations to these decisions. Part of what we discussed yesterday, or 2 days ago, I guess, in the visit in the shipyard and with the management, was if we were to, and this is exactly the same conversation we had in Germany, to be clear, exactly the same. If we were to go down this route, which Canadian companies would you partner with? How much would be done in Canada? Who would do the after-sales servicing? Because one of the big things on contracts is, particularly military, is most of the cost comes after you buy the hardware, like the vast majority. And so it's quite important how that's apportioned out. And it's one of the considerations when comparing, to go to the aircraft example, to comparing those. So we look at the benefits to Canadians, Canadian jobs, Canadian futures, as well as the security benefits. And we're going to be very deliberate about the F-35, as we should, because these are very large commitments of taxpayer dollars.
Next question, Murray.
Hi, Prime Minister. Murray Brewster with CBC News. Are you confident the budget's going to pass?
I am 100% confident that this budget is the right budget for this country at this moment. This is not a game. This is, this is a critical moment in the global economy, or it's an important moment in the global economy. It's a critical moment for our country. And it's a critical moment for our country, and many of the questions that have been asked this afternoon highlight aspects of why it's so important. Over-reliance on the United States, security challenge. Where are we going to find the growth given the headwinds from the new U.S. trade policy? And what this budget will do is provide the answer to that question, and the means to become masters in our own home, maîtres chez nous. So it's the right budget, and the responsibility of the government, myself, the Minister of Finance, and others, is to put forward the right budget for the country at a moment like this. And that's what we're doing. Ce n'était pas la question. La question, c'est le... en effet, c'est... Le budget est le budget pour le moment. Et c'est un point tournant pour notre pays. Et ce sera un budget avec des investissements générationnels et un budget pour un pays avec ambition, confiance, l'audace et puis indépendance par rapport aux États-Unis. Ça, c'est le prix de ce budget.
Murray.
Let me ask this then. Are you prepared to fight an election on this budget?
I'm always prepared to stand up for the right thing.
Next question. Last. Dernière question.
Ian Austin from the New York Times. You described your meeting with President Xi as a turning point in relations with China. What changed to make that happen, and what needs to happen now to make sure that forward momentum continues and things don't reverse again?
I think we both described it as such, first point. I think at its core, it is about the way we treat each other, interact with each other. What we were saying earlier is sort of pragmatic engagement. Where can we engage? Where are we not going to engage? Where do we agree? Where can we build? Where do we disagree? And we're not. And being clear about that. And there may be some bumps along the way when there's some ambiguity, but ironing those out as quickly as possible. And then there is, because there are a lot of areas where cooperation makes sense. Look, I'll give you an example. We are two countries that care about climate change and care about global solutions to climate change. Right there's an enormous area for cooperation. We are two countries, at least Canada traditionally has been a country who understands the international monetary and financial system and the changes in the international monetary and financial system, understand the importance of financial stability, the issues with transition and other aspects. This is an issue when you're the rising economic power. So there's another area of engagement there. So there's a host of places where there is an alignment of issue above and beyond the direct commercial ties.
Follow-up.
Began. Where and when did you apologize to the president? How did he
I saw
respond?
him. We had dinner. We had dinner together. You saw it. There were a few of you were there, and we had a very good dinner. It was very cordial. And I spoke to him at the dinner privately, obviously. Privately, now it's public. There you go.
Thank you. This.
Well, my regret. I did say J's and 6. I certainly very happily take J's and 7, and I'm going to say something that is. I was 100% cheering for them. I will confess that I was looking at my phone during session 2 of APEC, and I knew that we were, we had 2 on with no outs in the bottom of the 9th. I don't know if you were watching. Were you watching it? Watching, but you're picking, yeah. And so I was, that was a bit of a blow. But in full disclosure, selfishly, the fact that I think I will be back in Canada in time to turn on the TV for Game 7, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that. I'm sorry, guys. I'm grateful for that. And I feel very good. I feel very good about it. And I'll say one thing, which is something, since we're in the mode of conveying private conversation, since this is what I said, I can say it. What I said, one of the things I said to John Schneider, the manager, when I had the chance to go to the media day before the series started, is kind of the lesson of the way that the Jays play for the country, right? They take risk. You take risk. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes you put someone on the mound, or you put you pinch hit or pinch run for somebody. It doesn't work out, but they take risk. They're aggressive, and they're a team. I mean, they're clearly a team, and that's why So you don't need all the payroll. You don't need to be the big American team to win the World Series. So I feel very good, because if you're a risk taker, you play as a team. That gets you the World Series, and our Canada is taking risks, and we are a team. We are Canada strong. There you go. You asked for that last bit. Thank you very much.
Prime Minister, this was an entire press conference. Est-ce qu'il va faire une conférence de presse?